welcome back to our channel. My name is Amelia Mascioni for those of us who just found me. The Beautiful Mind Academy is a tutoring service, so if you are looking for one-to-one or group sessions, feel free to reach out to me. I cover all of the task list if you just let me know where the challenges are that you're facing, and then I will create a PowerPoint for you, and I'll ask you a couple of questions as well in terms of how you like to learn, so this way the one-to-ones or the group sessions are really catered to your needs. Along with the 5th edition task list, we do tutoring in math, science, homework assistance for levels K all the way up to adult learning. So if you know anybody who's interested, send them our way. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about B-14, where it looks at verbal operants, and this is a really fun task list item. So I hope that you have as much fun as I do today. So let's talk about a verbal operant. A verbal operant is, a speaker and listener. So you need to know who is speaking and who is listening. And this is really important because when we are looking at scenarios later on in this video, you're really going to have to pick out what the question is asking. Is the question asking you about the listener who's performing the task, or is the scenario asking you who is speaking? So just something to watch out for when you are doing quizzes. We're also going to be looking at point-to-point correspondence versus formal similarity, which seems to come up again and again when we're looking at our verbal operants. These are also important because when you are trying to decipher which verbal operant is being used, you can start to use and determine, does it have point-to-point correspondence? If so, does it have formal similarity? If so, then we can start to see, okay, which verbal operant has point-to-point and formal similarity. And again, if they don't, then you're doing kind of the same process. In the video, we're going to be looking at what a mand is, tact, echoic, intraverbal, textual, and transcription. And then later on, we're also going to be looking at listener responding. So we do have quite a few things to go through today. So bear with us as we go through them, explain, provide examples. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and you can comment down below on this video. So let's get started. Let's look at what these two terms mean. Before we start using these terms, let's see what they are. Point-to-point correspondence means that each word is exactly the same. Okay, an example. I say, hi, how are you? You say, hi, how are you? As you can see, every single word is exactly the same. For more examples, I manned for cookies. This person mans for cookies. I sign cookies. You sign cookies. As long as they're the same words. Whereas formal similarity is when the antecedent, so what the model presents, and the response, whatever the learner emits, share the same verbal operant. Okay, so in this case, formal similarity means that if I am writing something, the listener is also writing something. If I am signing something, the learner is signing something. So I'm going to just go back to point-to-point correspondence for a second because the words are the same, but it doesn't have to share the same modality. So what that means is if I say, hi, how are you? Somebody can sign, hi, how are you? As long as the words are the same. Whereas formal similarity means that they take the same form, the same verbal operant. So if it's a mand, echoic to echoic, transcript, they're the same. Okay? So let's do some examples. The instructor says blue and the learner says blue shares point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity. So How? So because they're both saying blue, that's point to point because it's the same words. And because they're both just simply saying it, they're sharing formal similarity. 2, the instructor says blue and the learner writes blue. So this shares point-to-point correspondence because we do have the same words, blue and blue, but it does not share formal similarity, okay? And the reason is because the instructor says blue, but then the learner writes blue. So we can see that they are sharing a different verbal operant. The instructor says blue and the learner signs green. Now we have two different words, blue and green. So they do not share point-to-point correspondence, and the instructor says blue, but this learner signs green. So saying it and signing are two different things. And when they're different, we say that they do not share formal similarity. Okay, and like I said, these are going to come up when we are going through our verbal operants a little bit more. So this is why these are important. Okay, so if you do have any questions, remember you can comment down below and I'll be more than happy to assist you with those. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about what a mand is. So as per Cooper, a mand request is defined as a verbal operant in which a speaker makes a request for something they need or want. The purpose of the mand is to gain access to a specific item, activity, or attention. Mands are typically reinforced by the specific item or action requested. The speaker's motivation is based on their desire to satisfy a particular need or desire, and the mand allows them to effectively communicate this to others. Okay? So, given we have a really big paragraph, I would like to just say the most important thing is a request for something they need or want. Okay? When it comes to manding, something that's really important is mands always require an MO. Okay? So when we are trying to decide if certain scenarios or questions are mands, we always want to see, does this question have an MO to it? If there's an MO and this learner is requesting for it, chances are it's a mand. For example, I want a cookie, water please. For both of these, they are only a mand when, let's say, this learner wants a cookie, right? They're asking for it. Or in this case, water please, if the learner is thirsty, then they're manding for it, right? So as you can see in both of these examples, the MO is there, that want is there. Okay, so just make sure that a mand is distinguished by its MO. Whereas a tact, okay, as per Cooper, is defined as a verbal operant in which a speaker comments on or labels things and in their environment. The purpose of a tact is to share information about the world or to describe something in the speaker's surroundings. The reinforcement for a tact is typically social in nature, such as the listener providing attention or acknowledging the accuracy of the label. Tacting allows individuals to communicate effectively about their environment. So how is a mand different than a tact? Okay, well, for a tact, an individual is actually seeing something and labeling it. There is no MO here, okay? They're simply looking in their environment and labeling what they see, and there's no need for an SD. So we're not having to do anything, we're not having to say anything. So for example, truck in the presence of the truck, or milk when you're passing the milk at the grocery store, right? So think of a tact as you're walking, you're walking down the street and you're labeling what you see. So if I'm walking, I might label car, tree, sky, clouds, flowers, butterflies, when I see them. Okay? Echoic. As per Cooper, an echoic is a verbal operant in which a speaker repeats or imitates the vocal behavior of another speaker. The purpose of an echoic is to establish a correspondence between the spoken words of the model and the vocal behavior of the imitator. Echoics are important for language development as they contribute to the acquisition of verbal repertoires. As a reminder, echoics involve point-to-point correspondence. Okay, and this is where we're starting to get those terms that we spoke about earlier. So an echoic is simply imitation, copying what you hear, right? So an example, I say green, the learner says green. Okay, stop that after hearing somebody say stop that. And as you can see, they have point-to-point correspondence because they are imitating word for word what you say or what they hear. Okay, so in echoic, if you work in a clinic setting, if you do IBI, these are performed when you say, and then whatever you say, right? So it could be say nose, the learner says nose, and that would be correct. They are echoing what they are hearing from you. Okay, and again, it does need to involve point-to-point correspondence in order for it to be an echoic, right? So if I say nose and they say ears, then it's not considered an echoic. Let's move on to intraverbals. As per Cooper, an intraverbal is a verbal operant in which a speaker responds to the verbal behavior of others. Unlike echoics, intraverbals do not involve a one-to-one correspondence. Instead, they typically occur in the context of conversation, where speakers respond to questions, comments, or statements from others. The reinforcement for intraverbals is often the continuation of social interactions and access to information. So as a reminder, intraverbals do not involve point-to-point correspondence, but what they do involve is some sort of answer to questions or commenting. Okay, so these are where you're starting to get that conversational piece. For example, saying cookie when someone asks, what do you want? Okay, so this comes up a lot, and I provided this example for a reason. So sometimes we do have questions about when you're asking your learner, what do you want? And they say cookie in this example. Some people would suggest that that's a mand, okay? But it's not, because a mand is when your learner is highly motivated by something and they are going to request for it, okay? In this case, if you ask your learner, what do you want? And they're responding to you, then they're answering your question. This would be considered our intraverbal, okay? With our intraverbals, as we said, they do not involve point-to-point correspondence, okay? So they don't need to be the same because they're not echoics. And they also, do not need to share modalities, right? So I can ask, what do you want? And my learner can sign what they want, right? They don't have to share formal similarity either. Textual, as the name suggests, to think of a text, reading words that are presented as a text. In this case, there is point-to-point correspondence, okay, because you are reading what you're seeing and it should be exact, but there's no formal similarity. For example, if you see the words cat and you read cat. If you see on the whiteboard the word dog and you sign dog. These are all textual. So think of textual as simply just reading something, okay? Transcription is writing down what is heard. Reminder, there is point-to-point correspondence. You should be writing exactly what you see, but they don't need to share formal similarity. An example, taking notes during a class. So you're listening to the teacher and you're writing your notes. You see something on the whiteboard and you're writing down your notes. This is all transcription. I'm so sorry. Taking notes during class, you're listening to the teacher and writing notes. Not that you're seeing it, I'm sorry. But what you can also do is think of in court, when you have somebody listening and writing all of those the details, they are transcribing. So you can also think about that. Okay, next is listener responding. So now we do take a different position in scenarios where now we're looking at the listener and what is the listener doing. So in applied behavior analysis, listener responding refers to the category of verbal behavior where an individual is responding to the verbal behavior of others. Okay, so now they're responding to what is being asked or told. This behavior involves understanding and reacting to spoken or written stimuli. Okay, so an example, my mom said, "Go and get the book from the bookshelf." The child went to the bookshelf to obtain the book and brought it to his mother. So in this case, the child is the one engaging in this listener responding, right? So when I had actually mentioned about making sure that you are understanding who is the listener in scenarios, it's for questions like this or examples like this, where you can have, well, what is the mother doing versus what is the child doing, right? In this case, the child is the one listening and performing the action. So we have that listener responding, okay? So just as a reminder, and I can't say it enough, we need to read through our questions very carefully and make sure that we actually understand what the question is asking us, okay? It's very, very easy to kind of lose ourselves in the thinking process, especially when there's a lot of fluff in scenarios. So always make sure that you identify the question and then go back. And if you have to read it 2, 3, or 4 times, make sure you do that. Okay, let's go through our quiz. So the questions are all going to involve what verbal operant is being demonstrated in the question, and it can be any from the ones that we discussed today, including listener responding. Okay, number 1, sorry. A learner uses his SGD to say washroom please in the classroom. So what verbal operant is being asked here? And I hope you guys said amend, and if you didn't, that's okay. We can dissect these questions further, and like I keep saying, you can leave comments down below and I can definitely help you and let you understand why it's amend and not another verbal operant. So in this case, it is amend because there should be an MO in place that he needs to go to the washroom and he is requesting for something, okay? So keep in mind, a man doesn't have to be requesting for food items all the time, or a man doesn't necessarily have to be requesting for activities. It could also be gaining access to something, right? 2, during a nature walk, Charlie said, "This is such a beautiful tree." All right, so for number 2, we are looking at a tact. And the reason why we're looking at a tact is simply because he's labeling what he sees on this walk. Okay. 3, a teacher is playing with cars and says car, and the learner grabs the car and says car. What verbal operant is being displayed by the teacher? Okay, so the teacher is playing with the car, says car, and then the learner says car. So what's going on here? Okay, well, we do have the learner copying, imitating the teacher. We have the learner who's listening out in his environment and copying. And what do we call that verbal operant that has point-to-point correspondence and is also about imitating? You are correct. It's all about our echoic. Fantastic, guys. Let's keep going. We got number 4. The mechanic asked, "What's wrong with your cart today?" Tony replied, "I'm not sure. It won't turn on." What verbal operant is being displayed by Tony?
All right, everybody, this one is our intraverbal. We do have this conversation, this back and forth exchange. We have a question and then Tony is responding back, and that's what we call our intraverbal. Number 5, a learner is picked to go on the announcements at her school. She goes on and begins reading from a document prepared by the secretary. What verbal operant are we looking at here? All right, everybody. So for number 5, we're looking to see, well, what exactly is she doing, right? In number 5, she is going on the announcements, but the key thing here is she is reading from something. She's reading from the script that the secretary had written for her. And anytime that you are reading and seeing something, you are looking at a textual prompt. Okay? So our textual prompt is any time that you are using some sort of text to prompt your learners. So again, because I do work in a clinical setting, some of the prompts that the teachers or the ITs will use is textuals, where they'll go to their learner and they'll write something and their learner will complete whatever that textual prompt is. Okay, so anytime that you have any sort of reading a document, reading the whiteboard, reading something, it's always going to be guiding you to transcript, or textual, sorry. 6, Sarah's college teacher talks really fast. She is trying to keep up. Sorry, she is trying to keep up by writing really fast. So what's going on here? Okay, sometimes like the questions aren't going to be very straightforward. You're going to have to try to understand what's being asked of you. So in this case, the teacher is talking and Sarah is writing. So what is that verbal operant called when you are listening and doing something? Listening and writing? Absolutely, it's our transcription. Perfect. Transcription is our verbal operant that's all about listening and writing. All right, 7, the teacher says, I would like someone to start reading from page 5. Kelly begins reading. Kelly's behavior is considered what? Okay, this is a very clear example of making sure we know what we are being asked of us. So in this case, we have the teacher and we have Kelly. We want to know what's Kelly's behavior. Okay, great job. So this one is going to be our listener respond. Simply because the teacher's asking something and Kelly's doing it, right? So Kelly's behavior is going to be that listener responding, right? She's listening to the question and then she's doing it. 8, the therapist brought cookies out for Jeremy. As the cookies came out of his as the cookies came out of his backpack, he began signing for cookie. All right, so if you do need some extra time, please go ahead and pause because I am going to be telling you guys the answers pretty quickly if you haven't noticed. So in this, 8 is a mand, okay? So the learner saw the cookies and he saw the cookies and then he signed cookies. 9, Stacy went to the zoo with Miranda. As they were walking, Stacy said, wow, that lion is beautiful. Miranda followed with, wow, that lion is beautiful. What verbal operant is Miranda exemplifying? And I'm going to leave this question to you. Please comment down below what verbal operant is being exemplified in question number 9. And I'm going to do the same for you guys for question 10. So let me read it. The student saw the words, write this down on the board, and began writing exactly what was written on the board. Okay, again, I'm going to leave question 9 and 10 for you. So please go ahead and comment down below what your answer is. And if you can, provide an explanation as to why you chose the verbal operant that you did.
that would be fantastic, especially for people who are just starting out with verbal operants. They can be very challenging, so anything can help, right? So your explanations can be really appreciated from others who are looking at our channel as well. All right, and that's just our reference page for Cooper. So thank you everybody for listening in. Thank you for taking the time to comment when you do. If you have any questions, kindly let me know. I hope that the verbal operants are getting easier and easier for you guys as we explain them. And I hope to see you guys at our next video. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.